Shall we like
start?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I did this last time. I just waffled on and on and on, and we're like, no, we should specifically talk about the Odyssey now.
Let's talk about the Odyssey. Maybe we should sort of explain.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Right, I'm going to stay in one position.
Maybe we should explain why this is happening.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
Other than just that we love Jenks, and this is a good excuse for us to have a chat with Jenks about it.
I mean, let's be honest, that is the main reason this is happening.
Yeah, basically. So I suppose if you're good for me to just go for it, Sarah.
Do it.
So I suppose a bit of a little introduction. Sarah and I recorded an episode about Odysseus. We released a couple of weeks ago, and it was full of rage. And to say the least,
full of rage.
And we decided that we maybe would need a third party to maybe mediate our rage somewhat. And we've met Jenks from Greek Myth Comix on Instagram, InstaPals, and Jenks does loads of great work on the Odyssey. I don't know about you, Sarah, but I'm feeling incredibly intimidated because your knowledge of the Odyssey is so much wider than mine.
I will point out that I've been turning it into a graphic novel for like 7 years now. I realized, to my shame, that's how long I've spent doing it, and it's only because I actually have like a day job for actual teaching. And the only reason I did it was to try and help my kids understanding it. But you forget stuff. So I did have to reread bits just to make sure I could actually with some form of, sounding like I know what I'm talking about. And I forgot the word for what that is. So that's a good start.
That's a good start. Well, in preparation for this, I listened to your podcast about the Odyssey. Awesome. So
I will point out that I don't love him. I'm not here to say you must adore him and everyone says he's this and he's that because he's misunderstood. But I do like to have a slightly more measured approach to just, I can't remember if we're swearing or not, but basically beat. And I quite like to, because I've spent quite a lot of time feeling like I'm in his head, wondering what his decisions are and why he makes them. And then reading all these additional sources as well on top of that recently has been really, really helpful, and tweeting about it and being given more information has been really cool too. And just I like mysteries, and he's a mystery. He's very much a mystery, and I like to work out mysteries. So that's my stance on him. I will be slightly more lenient, but only because I'm and I'm not going to do I'm Odysseus either, because that was just really mean.
We didn't give him any opportunity for redemption, did we? There was a brief attempt.
That was an attempt.
An attempt was made. No, there wasn't. He just realised we hated him so much, and it just poured right out.
It sort of started off as a we kind of feel like Odysseus is loved too much, so maybe we should talk about why we shouldn't love him. And then it sort of
snowballed,
spiraled.
That's so interesting you say he's loved so much, because he seems to be utterly hated by most people.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Because about a week ago, I think it was, Jenks posted on the Greek Myth Comix Twitter saying, we're going to be having this chat, and what are your thoughts, interweb? What are your thoughts on Odysseus? And I was surprised at how many people sort of were like, well, I am going to swear, he's a bit and it was I mean, as you said, it was great to learn so many things, because I think people kind of piped up with some great facts as well. But yeah, that was an interesting experience.
I was surprised, actually. I was surprised. And I think also a lot of the time we sort of hyperbolize, is that a word? About Odysseus for sort of comic effect, and sometimes and then you get like rebuffed with a real solid fact on Twitter, and you're like, oh no, this isn't why I got into podcasting, for facts.
But you love the facts, the nerdy references, they're everything.
You do love nerdy references.
people were so not mean about him, but just so heartfeltedly offended by him and his very existence in mythology, which I was like, I thought actually, like, has he been, to use a modern term, cancelled? Because people were just like, I can't even, and he's this, and here's a reason why he's awful, and I'm not even going to tell you who these people are that I'm talking about that he's done horrible things to. You should just know. And that was intimidating, actually. And that's when I then went down and sat down, having already bought my Gantz. I was like, right, I'm going to find out now everything that I thought I knew and possibly didn't entirely know, and still don't entirely know. Because the fun thing about him is that it's at what point is it canon that we talk about him, because he's been written about by so many people for such a long period of time, and a lot of things that people refer to aren't in the Odyssey or the Iliad, but they are talked about in the the epic cycle, which is all loves, and then in subsequent plays, and then even in like Roman writers as well seem to be ascribing things to him too. And so it's just like, so who is Odysseus? That's awful, don't do that. But no, really though, who is he? And so I think we picked out some particular choice tweets.
We did. Turn to my notes.
At _La Scapigliata said, they hate him because of Christian pre-notions of morality, bad versus good. So they fail to understand what Odysseus represents: cunningness and willingness to withstand adversity. Greek heroes represented the will to live, not moral role models. Odysseus is Metis and the fox, which I had to check wasn't actually is Metis and the fox actually a thing? Is there a fable, or is it just he's Metis, he's knowledge, and he's also the fox?
I read that as like
wily and cunning.
Yeah.
And I really agree with this, because people do tend to condemn him for everything in very black and white terms without considering why he might have taken an action. And there's not like there isn't a lot to condemn, but perhaps maybe like think why he did a thing before, and then also look at other things he also did, because people tend to really focus on the negative things he's done, hence the whole idea like, is he being cancelled? And then another one, Dr. Jeremy Smith's metal classicist: is Patroclus' death the fault of Hector or Euphorbus or Apollo or Achilles or Zeus or fate? Events in the Homeric cosmos are often overdetermined, and accountability for actions can be a matter of both and, or rather than either or. I read that wrong. A matter of both stroke and rather than stroke or. Odysseus and men can both be responsible. I think that's because talking about the fact that in the very opening lines, Homer says all his men died because it was their fault. But like, is it their fault? Is it Odysseus's fault from poor leadership? That's basically an Odyssey exam question for the GCSE.
Yeah, that's a good question though.
And I said, oh, well, they wouldn't have known that, and he said, yes, they would have done. And I find it really fascinating. Perhaps, like when you're given a modern TV show and it starts in medias res and you're just given like a scene, and then you think, oh, so now I have got a predetermined idea about this character and that character because of what I've seen. But then it shows you like 3 days earlier, and you start to see the build up towards it, and you start to decide for yourself. I wonder, is there a bit of that at the beginning of the Odyssey, and then you get to know Odysseus? There's also those 4 books where he's not even in the Odyssey, and he's just talked about by his son and all the people he's left behind when his son goes to meet them and find out more about his father. And then we meet him, and he's nothing like that. He's this broken shell of a man crying on the beach. And so I do feel like you're in the Odyssey, at least your ideas about him are meant to be challenged a lot of the time, and then you make your own decisions about it.
Well, this is why I do actually have a bit of a problem with this. When sort of, and you get it quite a lot in classics, some people say, oh, well, you're just thinking that because of post-Christian like notions of what you think, which is certainly, I mean, to a great extent, a lot of how we think about myth is very much guided by our like modern understanding, and a lot of what we were doing with this episode was to kind of poke fun at it from a modern perspective, but also like, I mean, the first thing I was going to say is that I think that the bad versus good in Odysseus is in the ancient text. It's not purely a post-Christian thing, because there's no, like you're saying, Odysseus in the Odyssey is such a complex character, in a way that we don't really allow him to be. That actually, I think, saying that bad versus good kind of discourse, a character is only a post-Christian ideal, is I think it's not giving the ancient texts credit for that kind of deep character
no, that's true.
Involvement.
I think we were talking about like how complex perhaps is the Odyssey compared to the Iliad, and I was actually thinking the Iliad's more complex because like Achilles is almost a full-on tragic character. We don't see him die, but we know he does die just to fulfill Aristotle's sort of rules for tragedy that he realized later. And Odysseus isn't. He at no point says he's in, well, no, he occasionally might go, oh, it would have been better if we'd done this, but he doesn't say I was wrong. He doesn't realize his error, and then he doesn't die because of it. And maybe that's why we don't like him as much, because everyone loves Achilles, even though he's quite literally a killing machine. That's all forgiven because he experiences love and brotherhood and that unbelievable passion when Patroclus dies, and then he realizes his error and he just wants to get out there and kill, and then we know that he will die later, even if we don't then see that in the Iliad, so it's not like a full tragedy. But I think
also with Achilles, which is slightly off topic, I'm aware, but it just makes me think of, because I listened to your Achilles podcast episode today as well, this idea of like how the ancient hero and the modern hero are totally different concepts. But I think maybe in modern times, when you hear the word hero and you can't separate sort of maybe what people are saying we did, you can't separate those modern notions from the ancient person themselves. So I think like the minute he's turned to be a hero, a modern audience immediately aligns themselves with Achilles, which in the ancient text it's much more complex and nuanced, why you end up sympathizing with Achilles and like that moment at book 24, or that moment in the Iliad with Priam Priam, you know, that's an incredibly complicated moment, and that's one of the reasons why I love Achilles personally. But I think the idea of a hero is very much often mistaken. And Abi and I were talking, I think, about this just before, the idea of Odysseus as a hero, and Abi was making the point that one of the great things about Odysseus that we do love is that he kind of challenges that idea of what an ancient hero is. And you know, because as you know, Achilles is kind of blind rage. Well, not, that's simplifying it, but Achilles is very much a hero, the heroic code and all that. And then the next epic is just, I think it's a complex look at human choice. And unfortunately, in my eyes, Odysseus's choices are always selfish, and he never really tries to empathize with people, and that's probably the reason I dislike him the most. But that honestly, that didn't come across in any of what I was saying. And I
won't disagree with you at all, but I would argue there are reasons for it, and yet is that the author's intention? That's always at the forefront of my mind. And who was the author anyway? But let's not right now. But is it actually that complex? Is he? Because I can't think of him without thinking a little bit of Milton's Satan, because I read them at school at the same time. And you know, Milton was really criticized for making Satan far too enjoyable a character. You really love to hate him. And so just, even though they don't really have anything in common, but just because I read them at quite an important moment during my A-levels, and I was like, oh, I didn't make links at the time, but looking back, it's like, okay, you do kind of enjoy hating on Odysseus a fair bit, in the same way that you do.
I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Actually, on that note, we were talking about, someone else tweeted like they thought Odysseus was the least bad of all.
Yeah, interesting. I loved that. I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
I immediately went, no, it's Ajax. I will just say, I think it's Ajax because he's, for a start, my favorite Ajax moment is when they do the embassy to Achilles in the Iliad in book 9. Oh God, 9s and 6s, I can't remember. 9. And Ajax, Ajax goes, what, you're just gonna sit in here all because of a girl? You're like, oh, me fight good, me not understand complex emotion. But he does, and then he has this horrific shame when he doesn't get Achilles' armor. I mean, being the one to carry him from the battlefield, and he thinks he's been cheated, and it's just because Odysseus is really clever. And I mean, he actually goes first in the sort of argument, and he says lots of really mean things about Odysseus. And Odysseus just goes, dude, that's really harsh. And then also, you did this. He's like, that's not fair. And then Athene comes down and makes them choose, which really just seems to be a metaphor for Odysseus was cleverer, so they pick him. And then that ridiculous amount of shame, but also he's prevented from doing the really awful thing of killing all his friends. But then he does the really awful thing of killing himself, and he's like he's the only one to ever do that. So I think that's why Ajax is the least bad of the.
I've got to say, when I
read really unnamed Achaians, by the way, who were great and no one talks about.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I think I replied to that tweet saying Patroclus will always be our love. Like.
Not that I'd forgotten about Patroclus, but he doesn't really do a lot of fighting.
No, he's not a hero in the same sense.
Do you know what? He is the best because he doesn't do the fighting, and he only does it because. Yeah, no, you're right. He's obviously the best. What was I thinking?
He does it for the right reasons. But I did also though when I read that I thought Ajax, but I was like, but I have no way to back this up because I really don't know enough about him. But was like, I just feel like it's Ajax.
I just think Ajax is so simple in his motives that makes him like the least bad. He's the least complex, so maybe he's I don't know, what am I saying about people then, that people with complex motives are not so great? But then that's going back to Odysseus and why we potentially hate him.
But in terms of like heroism, I think if we're talking about who is a least bad hero, Ajax is one of the most simple. Just he is a hero for being a hero's sake. He battles because that's his job as a hero, and the deepest shame for him is to have killed himself, because for a hero that's like the worst thing you could ever imagine. So actually in terms of just being like bare and simple, no complications, just straight out hero, like Ajax is kind of up there.
And his epithet's lovely too, bulwark of the Achaians. He protects everyone else because he's so strong, and that's lovely. Yeah, he is lovely. But Patroclus, he's also lovely and flawed because he's told not to go too far, and he does anyway. It's like the traditional myth trope: don't look back. And he does, and he dies because of it. And if only. I sound like woman now. If only you had not done this, Patroclus. I think you're probably. It's okay. So either Ajax or Patroclus. We'll have a poll, and then everyone will clearly pick Patroclus, and then
I mean, that's really, pretty much.
It would be really sad if Ajax lost that, because it would be like of the contest of the arms.
It's happening again. Oh man,
I'm not sure we can do that to him. I don't think we can do that to him.
It's Ajax. We're picking Ajax.
He deserves it.
Get t-shirts made. And yes. Okay, cool. Right, that's sorted. Right, next topic.
So we can retweet that and just say it's Ajax. We've decided.
We've decided.
Not a pity vote at all.
I'm just looking at.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking at the notes. Because we've sort of, our first big topic that we decided to broach in one episode was, what is the point of the Odyssey? And we literally put in these notes that we gave to Jenks, literally, rather than being rude, promise. It's not like, what's the point? It's
what is the point?
Yes, what we think.
God.
That would be.
And then in response, I wrote you an essay.
I
enjoyed reading this. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's pages long.
I know. I'm so worried about going off topic.
I love it.
So
it's great.
You were saying it feels like a very modern exploration of character, problematic characters, difficult relationships, decision making is central. And yeah, it really is. I mean, and then you said the Iliad was very black and white and plot driven. Like, really? And then actually I was thinking maybe the Odyssey is more black and white and plot driven than the Iliad. I think it depends on which parts of the storyline you're focusing on. I mean, Achilles isn't even in like loads of the Iliad at all. I mean, it's not the Achilles either. Let's just point that out. But Odysseus is, well, he's not physically in the first 4 books, but he's present in the myth of Odysseus is being talked about. And I thought, which is more complex, but actually, like, so in terms of plot, he wants to get home, and then he gets home. He starts off not trying very hard, because maybe he's sort of taken it for granted. Everyone else is getting home, I'll just get home. And then it all goes horribly, horribly wrong. And as well, he's got this one motivation, although actually I had an idea for another motivation maybe, but the main one is kudos, or kleos. Actually, I was taught the word kudos, and then later on discovered kleos is actually what kudos gives you. So kleos, he wants his glory, which is really fascinating, because all the stories before the Iliad are him not wanting to go to war and just wanting to be a family man. So it's like, so again, what has this done to him over time? If he's going to come home, he's got to come home with all the stuff. Otherwise, what's he going to say to his wife? I've been away 10 years and all I brought home was
what do I have to show for it?
I went to Troy and I came home with this lassie, whatever.
I love that.
So he and then there's, so you can see this character development as well from the what's the word, when you get the comparison of what you hear about him in the Telemachus, the first 4 books, then how you meet him and he's sitting on a beach crying, which is incidentally how you meet Telemachus. They're both sitting on a beach crying, so you can see they're both like the same.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Of the same family. And then he's sitting on a beach crying, and then we see, and he doesn't trust anyone or anything, and he's constantly going this the way and that. In his great mind, he thought this and that, in his great heart, and like he doesn't even trust the gods anymore, because he's been so hard done by and so punished. And
also, to be fair, the gods just left him on Calypso's island for 7 years, so I'm not surprised he doesn't trust them anymore. It's like, oh, I forgot Odysseus.
Oh, he's still
like a year is probably about 5 minutes, so it's like, oh, I left the kettle on.
Very true.
But also Athene has only got that moment to go and ask for him to be released, because Poseidon's not there. Poseidon's gone to party with the Ethiopians. It's like, great, he's not here, he can't say no. Can I go and get Odysseus, please? I think I quite like that. At this point, you have to get him off this island.
But she takes her moment.
Yeah, she really, really does. I mean, she's got a system. She knows how to.
I love Athena. I mean, I absolutely love her.
My patron. Yeah. I was dressed up as her on my hen do.
Amazing.
We need to love that.
We need to see everyone involved.
We need to see pictures, please.
I will try and find. There not that many. But anyway, it was very, very odd. But yeah, so then we see him trying further to get home, and that's his only thought. So he is very linear. I must get home. I must get home. And when he gets home, his drive is so much so that his revenge is deadly and far too overzealous.
Brutal, yeah.
And yet completely vindicated and apparently overseen by Athene, who's like, no, they will die. Even at a point, I can't remember who it is, saying, no, but he will die. But there's a bit in the Iliad which is similar, when Menelaus is about to spare someone and Agamemnon's like, no, you must kill him. They almost it's this idea that they've transgressed too far. So yeah, I think it is actually really basic and linear, but the character is far more complex than perhaps he's given credit for.
I think what you were saying about kleos, he's after kleos. And what I find really interesting, if we're talking about the like Iliad versus the Odyssey, or not versus, like they're so different, it's difficult to do that. But comparing the two, what's really interesting is like Achilles' kind of drive for kleos, and the Iliad is so much about just getting kleos under any circumstances, whatever. But then what I find really interesting about the Odyssey is that like that the idea of kleos seems to be a little bit challenged. So like you said, like Odysseus goes on this absolute drive for kleos, but like I don't know, I feel like especially with this sort of interaction with Polyphemus, where because Odysseus boasts about he sort of needs to get his name out, and he needs to say, I am the one who has done this to you because of that kleos. That's then what ends up kind of dooming his whole the rest of his journey. So it's like a really interesting look on kleos, where like he seems to be like suddenly quite obsessed with it, but actually the sort of Homer or the author seems to be a little bit less sure about, you know, is it kleos at all stakes? And then you have Achilles in the underworld going, actually, I'm not sure if this was a good idea. So it's quite an interesting turn where like the Iliad is, you know, kleos at all stakes, glory is all you want. And then it's kind of like the Odyssey is like, oh, is that a good thing? Do we want that?
I think like it's sorry.
You go.
I was just gonna say I think it's easier for the authors in parentheses and maybe Greek society to challenge that, because the kleos that Achilles won was through battle, which is kind of the framework with which the heroic code works. But the way Odysseus is claiming, you know, the way he claimed that kleos with Polyphemus was entirely through his wiles, his cunning. And I think like it's easier maybe for the audience to test that. I think just a point.
It's almost like really... Achilles has fame and Odysseus has infamy.
Yes, yeah, interesting. Nice. Ooh.
Got my thinking hat on. I do love, I mean, I think we'll come back to him later because we were going to talk about Xenia later on, which I have so much to say about Xenia, but of course. But the bit where when he finally does reveal who he is, and also I would point out before I forget again, he's telling this story to the Phaeacians and he's not exactly making himself look great, and that is very interesting. But we will maybe come back to that. But when he does say it is I, Odysseus, haha, and then Polyphemus's response is, oh no, I knew you were coming. Palamedes happened to live with us for a while and he was a soothsayer, but you know what, I thought you'd be taller. And that's one of my favorite moments in the whole thing.
Such a zinger, I love it.
And then he curses him because he's just giving him his full name and address and where you can find him on weekdays. Yeah. So it's very much, I like to see it as that he's gone too far, but at that point, and then everything starts to go wrong, and I'm constantly going, maybe we can get kudos here, and yet no, it's going to go horribly wrong, and he will lose yet more men and ships and everything that was on the ships. In fact, all the slaves and they've women and they've children probably, and all the goods from Troy. It's not just his men that he loses. It's amazing amounts of loss that he's responsible for ultimately.
We were in your podcast that I was listening to today. You were saying I hadn't clocked it. It's 50 ships that he.
No, I got that wrong. It's 50 men on each ship. Sorry, I'm
50 totally men on each.
And I messed it up, and then I had to put an addendum underneath, and I knew it.
I'm sorry.
no, sorry, 50 men on 12 ships. That's a lot of people.
That's still a lot of people.
Yeah, 600 people.
Thank you for doing the maths.
Right.
And but that's only his men. And I can't remember from the catalogue of ships how many men he's brought with him, because I'm sure some of them died over 10 years, and maybe he that's certainly what's left. But also, that's just his men. It doesn't mention the enslaved peoples who would probably be on board as chattel, as booty, and as well as then, and probably all the animals that they've brought to eat as well, perhaps, although actually maybe not, because they're constantly stopping to get livestock
to eat other people's animals.
To eat other people's cheese.
That's allowed, Xenia. We will talk about that later.
Sorry,
I'm just looking at the notes again. What did we
basking in our glory then? Look. Well, actually, I think Xenia was the next thing we were planning on talking about.
Was it? Okay.
Well, no, wait. I've massively skipped a bit. Ignore me. We've forgotten about.
Oh no, it is coming up next. But I think you wanted to go over the characters.
Yes, the complex characters. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at this on my phone, and it just darts around. Sorry.
Well, the idea of these characters, what they mean to him, I think, was it? We were sort of.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of talking when we were looking through your initial notes, and we were we were talking about how the reason why we both love the Odyssey, and I feel like we should stress that We do love the Odyssey. Despite our ranting about Odysseus, we love the Odyssey.
Everyone loves the Odyssey, but hates Odysseus. So I think I'm not there.
Excellent. But one of the reasons why I think the Odyssey is so interesting is because there are these complex relationships all throughout it, and they, as you say, there are some in the Iliad as well. But the Odyssey is just full of really like difficult characters, and characters that you kind of want to love but also want to hate. And I think, and we just listed a few of them, but there are a lot in the Odyssey. But yeah, we sort of talk about Telemachus, Athene, Eurycleia, who's fascinating.
Oh yeah,
the Suitors.
Amazing. Okay,
so I don't know what you think about those characters.
Okay, so Telemachus, the son he's never really got to know, and yet is somehow growing up to be just like him, is very, very interesting. And obviously Penelope's got a lot to do with that, because Odysseus does compliment her when he's in disguise on how well she's run, the whole island in his absence. She's basically acted as a king, I think he says. So, she's doing a fabulous job. And Telemachus is a really good example of that. But people keep saying that he's really rude to his mother and tells her to go upstairs.
Yeah, we say that.
He is, but at the same time, everyone stands there and is really shocked that Telemachus has said such a thing. And to use a horrific phrase that we don't use anymore, he's attempting to man up in front of them all and prove himself, because all these suitors are the same age as him.
I know, it's mad.
That be?
Yeah.
And Telemachus, I think, means far war. Like I think that's it.
Yeah.
I do really like the names in Homer, because a lot of them, especially in the Odyssey, are quite Dickensian, or really maybe the Dickensian name should be Homeric, in like they have meaning. And far war. So like he's the boy whose father has gone to a far war and doesn't see, and then maybe when Odysseus is coming back, there will be a war because of him trying to save Telemachus. And he is fascinating, because when he finally gets to meet his father, and he's totally accepting, I think he's the only one who doesn't need tricking or testing.
Yeah, he doesn't disguise himself for Telemachus, I don't think.
No, he's already in disguise, and then suddenly he's like, not an old man. I think it's hilarious, because clearly, he's clearly just really old and haggard by this point.
It's a disguise.
Oh, what? This isn't really what I look like.
I just haven't washed. And then Telemachus seems to be constantly trying to impress his father and do the right thing, and do and then there's a bit in, I think it's book 22, which we have to teach now, which is great fun, except it's just fighting, which is quite difficult to teach. And then this happened, and this. But there's a bit when Telemachus forgets to shut the door to the storeroom, and all the suitors he's like, oh my God, I forgot. And he's so upset. And then I think maybe that's why then, when the horrific moment of killing the slave women of the palace comes around, because they've been unfaithful. About that. And then he's like, no, I'm not going to give them a clean death. I shall hang them. And in the translations, it's like he has this idea, I can't remember the word, I didn't write this one down, of course, and it generally sounds like he's had a good idea the way it's translated, or at least has an idea that's approved of, but it's his idea, almost like he's trying to impress his father to the lengths that he could go to. So he is rather interesting.
It's a really dark bit, that bit.
It's very dark. I think we're going to talk about it later on as well, and I brought it up now, and now I've lowered the tone, so I was just going to go right because it's so awful. And when I teach it, I go over it and over it, and we talk about the awful, beautiful imagery of them as the birds and their feet, and and he's done that, and you're like, I liked you. What?
I know you were quite a sweet, just lost boy, and now you're like a bit of a psychopath. Okay. Nicer moment where he's trying to press his dad when he's having a go at the bow, and it says, and he would have strung it on the third time had Odysseus not gone with Odysseus he's constantly motioning with his eyebrows. Yes, I love that so much. So good.
So he would have done it. He is his father's son, but then that would have ruined Odysseus's big plan. Athene's less problematic, because so Athene, right, she's a god, right, so supernatural, so not real. Am I allowed to say that? Is that blasphemous? Whenever I
she'll smite you down. You need to be careful.
I did have this lovely class that whenever I said because the gods aren't real, they'd go, "Oh, she did not mean it." It was beautiful. They did it every single time.
Fantastic.
I miss those kids a lot. But I do teach them a mantra for when they're writing about the gods. The gods are the external representation of talent in mortals. That is what the gods are. And other than that, they are fun asides or a bit of mythology and do what I say, not what I do, because I'm a god and there are no consequences for me, but there are for you because you're immortal. Hence I can sleep with my sister and it's fine. And that kind of
fine. It's totally fine.
It's totally fine. It doesn't matter. We live forever anyway. But she is the personification of wisdom. And for men and women, that's different things. And thus Odysseus is her pet because he's the wisest, which sounds really positive, but then he's described as sort of resourceful and wily and cunning and maybe not so positive. So it's almost like he's that taken to an extreme and she loves it.
She's all over it,
constantly giving him ideas and approving everything he's done. There's a lovely bit where he's after seeing Leucothoe and he's got the veil and he's trying not to die and he's trying to swim up to the shore, but it's just rocky crags, and it's like Athene gives him an idea to hold on to the crag to not be washed away. I think that's going a bit far.
I feel like that was nice.
He could come up with that idea on his own.
I feel like that was just life-saving natural instinct.
Instinct.
So but she does seem to get credit for every very good idea that she has. Also the way she mentors Telemachus in the first few books as Mentes and then later as mentor, and then appears as mentor later on as well and stands by Odysseus, and so which is interesting because that's a male character too. I was wondered about that. Does that like to give her, she's allowed because now she's male, but that's another
probably
so because she's his patron, he gets to do everything he likes and it's okay because she says so, kind of, and yet he never knows that she's there, but we are told. So she's an agent telling us that it's fine, you can't get upset about him for this, I say it's okay, and
it's like approval.
Fascinating.
I mean, this is why I think also because I think a lot of the time, a lot of the comments that we have seen on like Twitter and stuff, when we say about not liking Odysseus, I think people sometimes take that as saying bad hero, which is not at all what we're saying. And I think what's interesting about the gods in general, and where you have like patron gods and stuff, is that the gods in Greek myth are so flawed. And I think actually like trying to get at these idealistic perfect characters as a hero or as a god is a post-Christian idea, because we have a sense of a perfect god. And like, you know, just because we don't like him doesn't mean we don't think he's a good hero, just in the same way that I cannot like the gods, but it doesn't make them any less of a god. Like, and I think the fact that they are so flawed, and the fact that, you know, Athena stands by Odysseus no matter what, even though she hates all the Greeks anyway, she hates all of them except Odysseus. It's like that real flawed characterization that's so important to Greek myth. And it's like, you know, and I think I know that Miss Baby talks about this a lot, because she talks about Medusa and how people, a lot men get very angry when she praises Medusa. I'm not going to go into that, but you know, the idea that we have to really like all of the characters that are good heroes, whatever, in myth is just not something that I think ancient audiences would have appreciated. And I think the gods are so important in getting that across, because the gods are so flawed.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It's like that. I think that's why they play such an important role as representatives, but also as like flawed representatives. So she is Metis, but she's also like deeply flawed in that kind of thing. I don't know, that's what I've always thought.
No, I think because they are. I mean, religion is a system of control. Let's not beat around the bush here. You can't do these things because you are mortal, but the gods can. It's very much if you were immortal, yes, you could do this, but you mustn't. You must, you know, you will age, you will die, you will have children. All of these things have consequences for you. And then here's all the mortals who didn't do as they were told and did try and be like gods, and then they were punished, so you don't want to be like that. It's very much a kind of bogeyman almost.
The
bogeyman figure telling you how to behave, and you know, if you say you're better than so and so, she's gonna come and get you.
Never do that.
How dare you say you have more children than my mother Leto, even though it's true. I shall forget now what it was. Is that Danae? Artemis and Apollo get really
Niobe.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's Niobe, yeah.
She has a little to...
Yes. Yeah, in Ovid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that from Antigone, all the examples that she picks up and talks about.
Yes.
Great
play.
Oh yeah, and Eurycleia, because we were talking about flawed characters. And people say she's 2D, she's the housekeeper, but she's so bitter.
Yes.
She just seems to really hate all these other women who dallied about with the suitors, according to her. And she's like, I will tell you where they are, and I'll tell you which ones have been really bad. And then you should kill them.
Hard.
And even Odysseus is like, whoa, that is not your place to say, old woman, and also calm down. But I guess you can either read that as, wow, she's really, really going for it, and he's shocked, or he's shocked because she's a woman with an opinion. So
yeah, I thought that was interesting, you saying that. Yeah,
I want it to be the former and not the latter, because she is an enslaved woman herself, isn't she? She's been brought across at some points and being given as a gift, and that's generally how the women are in the household. But yeah, she's just so damning of them and her strength of views as well. And there's this horrible moment where she recognizes the scar on his leg. Flashback to when he got it. Back to the story. She's about to turn and tell Penelope, this is Odysseus, and he grabs her by the throat so she doesn't speak. And she can only she doesn't reply, which makes me think she's just going, it's fine.
Yeah.
And he's not, it is violent, but he's not necessarily doing it because he doesn't like, he's doing it because he's desperate in that moment.
Yeah.
Or, I'm not saying you just really shouldn't grab people by the throat, guys. But
good to know. I was thinking about it, but now you've told
me.
Write
that one down.
It's definitely a bad thing to do.
Good to know.
But, hey, kid. But she doesn't seem to hold it against him at any point.
Yeah. Which makes me think it's just more behavior, which is worrying as well. But yeah,
maybe
probably true.
But she seems to get him, and she raised him as well. Yeah. So perhaps, I mean, his mother is dead. It's almost like she's his second mother in a way, and she gets him. So that's really interesting in trying to understand Odysseus, maybe understanding her as well. They've certainly got a lot of similar ideas going on. Who was
the only thing I was going to say about, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
The thing that kind of made me think about when reading this through, and it's just a little plug basically, but because we have an episode from our first season that's about old people in mythology, and we talk about old women, and the nurse figure is so interesting in myth, and
very really complex for an unnamed character.
Yeah, and she is actually really we didn't talk about her in the episode, but she really fits into the kind of stereotype. There's always a stereotype of like an old lady in myth being a bit of a troublemaker, and you almost think that Odysseus is kind of conscious of that stereotype and is sort of stopping her before she can cause trouble. Kind of.
She also plays into that whole nurse characterization, because so much violence comes from one small action that she has. So when she tells Odysseus, obviously, that these terrible women in Penelope's household have done these supposedly terrible things, they will end up dead. And very often in Greek tragedy, the nurse character, people end up dead, just because of their sort of offhand comments usually. She's I wish we'd talked about her, because she is a very interesting character in that respect. To
be honest, it sounds like you could almost do an entire paper on just
let's do it.
All these. Oh, okay.
Let's do it.
Done. That's right. Joint paper.
The old lady. you know, in Wonder Woman, right? Just as
Yes.
a total aside here, right?
Yes.
And in the I was watching it going, so they're on an island only of women, but they have a senate, which is from the Latin senate for old man. Why do they have a senate? Why don't they have an? Oh, okay, fine.
I'm just applauding this. It's like,
but you can't have an anate from an anus.
Yeah. No, that's so good.
yes.
No, so I love that. That's okay. I did, however, use that as a fun entrance into Latin for the year 7s that year. So that was good. That was relevant.
That is great.
Relevant content.
Sorry.
I
would love
basically ticked all of. There you go. Yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say.
I'd love to be tickled. That didn't happen. Go, Sarah.
Okay, I'm gonna go. It's a quick aside. I'm just gonna say that if I could talk about how Hollywood has bastardized and changed myth, not for the better,
oh my God,
I could do it for hours. So
I
love
it.
I think it's just that's a PhD. I was literally all I was going to say, which just feeds into exactly what you just said, Sarah, was you're basically ticking all of Sarah's boxes here because like it's talking about a superhero movie and Latin etymology and like Hollywood doing stuff wrong. It's like basically Sarah's bread and butter. So
come and be in my class.
Yes, please. When? Tell me where, and I'll be there.
Okay, very serious.
Very
Should
serious.
we talk about the suitors?
Yes.
Okay. So I think the suitors are quite a caricature of.
Yeah, I like that.
Because they all really love to hate characters. Because Antenor and Eurymachus. Yeah, is it Eurycleia? Oh no,
I always forget all the names of the suitors, if I'm honest.
the two, like the gruesome twosome, as I like to call them, because they're the only ones who really have names until the other ones die, or like they actually have a speaking role, and they're like the head ones. But they're still, you realize later at the end, once they're dead, and their fathers are talking in the assembly, and you're like, they're young men, and like they are actually probably around the same age as Telemachus, because the whole idea is they're only here because they didn't go to the war, so they weren't told
of course
important enough to court Helen, and they either weren't born yet or they were just too young to go, so they're probably in their 20s, 30s tops, maybe early 40s, but and then they get more modern references. It's like that bit in Legally Blonde, where at the end Shatner's like, did you know she's the same age as me, talking about the woman who's married her father, and oh man, I wrote it down. Oh yeah, she's the same age as me, says the daughter who's killed her father and blamed it on his new wife. So like Telemachus must really hate them.
Yeah,
I've never thought of it
like so they're also shown just lazing about and eating. And every time Penelope comes in, they're basically going flawed, because and each man swore an oath under his breath to lie with her. Like, whoa, that's horrible.
It's very creepy. Yeah, the whole thing.
She's like, oh God, these guys everywhere. And she's constantly got to have the women with her, even in her own house.
Yeah,
because they're just everywhere.
Yeah, it's awful.
And they're also disgusting. Then this example of like the lazy young men don't know nothing about life trope that you even know. I keep saying. Because my other love, similar in Dickens, except they always get like venereal disease and die after spending all their money in gambling or on opium.
I love that,
like a cad.
And then there's some similar lads, because they are lads, right? There are similar lads in the Phaeacian kingdom, the prince and his mate, and they come up to Odysseus and say, you're going to join in? And it's like, no, I am heartsick, I've done too much. And, oh, come on, this is how guys like get renown, is in sport.
Yeah.
How insulting to Odysseus.
I know. I've seen things, man. I've seen things. They know nothing, and they think they know everything, and they think they know what's right. And they're also going on to the Xenia thing. Like they push things far too far.
Yeah.
They actually like. I'll say it now. I'll come back to it later. But they actually plot to kill Telemachus to get him out of the way. That's the only reason Penelope hasn't. I mean, it's only been. We always think it's longer, but I think it's only been 4 years that they've been in the house, because they get there and then they say marry, and then she does the whole trick with the weaving, and that works for 3 years.
For longer than it should.
Incredible, yeah.
They're just enjoying themselves far too much, and then they're probably really disappointed when she gets dobbed in by I forget which slave woman it is, which the slave woman says, "Oh no, she's lying," and they're like, "Oh damn, all right,
I have to do something now."
About it, but they're probably just really enjoying living the life of Riley palace all the time.
They're just like feeding off, the goodies that are in the palace, and just living their best life.
Also, just a little side point with the Suitors. I know obviously they were too young to go to Troy originally, but Neoptolemus joined the Greeks.
Yeah,
like there was nothing stopping them from being honourable and their own kleos, going to Troy home. But no, they sort of adds to this idea you're saying of like laziness and
Interesting.
Plus, Neoptolemus must have gone to the war when he was like 12.
Yeah,
which
very, very messed
up. Timeline is so weird.
He is a dark character as well. We're talking about dark characters.
He's so dark.
Also, very early example of abuse against ginger people, because he is Pyrrhus, he is ginger, he is fiery, right? Because he's got ginger hair and he's fiery, and thus he's evil, right? Other gingers in history, Judas, apparently Middle Eastern, but apparently still ginger. Oh, and also in that story, the devil. I was brought up a Catholic, and we had to do this. Guess who I got cast as?
No.
Every time.
No. Wait, was it Judas or was it Satan?
It just depended. There was another redheaded girl, and it just depended on which one of us had cut our hair short enough to play a boy. So it was fun. Other ginger, Menelaus, gets picked by Helen, but probably because her sister's married to his brother, right? So I'm sure the hair. But I like to. Well, most of my students know to write. Why did Helen pick him? Because he was ginger. They know to put this. But so anyway, Neoptolemus, what a horrible person for another time.
Yes.
So wow.
The only thing, if I'm gonna play devil's advocate,
okay,
which I'm gonna, the only thing I will say is, and not that I agree with this, but is there not like some kind of expectation that Penelope should remarry? In a sense
there is.
Like,
totally.
Odysseus is like, oh my god, how dare you? And it's like, Odysseus, not everyone thought you were coming home. Like, they've been living for years with people coming being like, oh, Odysseus.
It's even better than that, right? Odysseus said, Penelope, if I don't come home, remarry. See, this is
just making me mad about him again. So
this is why now we need to go on to Xenia, because Xenia is the reason I've decided why all of this happens, right? So, so it's. Do you want to talk about Xenia first and what it means to you, and then I will say why I think it's so goddamn important in the text, because it is. But I won't say that.
Which one of us is going to take this one, Abby?
You go. I'm going to drop you over that. So you love Xenia.
I really loved the qualification that you gave. My understanding of Xenia is that guest friendship is what it literally means, and it's this idea of kind of hospitality at all times, under sort of all circumstances, and like. My favorite story to do with Xenia and kind of exemplifying it is the Baucis and Philemon myth, which we talk about in our episode on the elderly. But I think it's just it's willing to share whatever you have with whoever comes to your door. Is kind of how I've always seen it. I don't know the specific framework of Xenia, and I'm excited to find out what it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that Abby or is that me?
No, that's you. That's definitely you.
Okay, that's not me. So, again, this is part of the whole like religion is control, but it's a really, really practical thing. So they don't have hotels. Travel is difficult. Safest travel seems to be by sea, but not everyone can afford that. If you're going anywhere, if you're walking anywhere, you face being attacked, you face wild beasts and so forth. So you are hopefully going to find someone on the way there who will give you a bed for the night. And so it's this expectation that you will be a good guest and they will be a good host. There are certain things that must be done. So the host must do these things without knowing the name or anything, or even, it's not like you must not ask the name, but it's just like the idea being you would do it for anyone. You don't need to know who they are and whether they're worthy of it, for example, in your eyes. You must give them food, shelter, comfort, whether that's a bath, bed for the night or whatever. And then the guest must take these things, say thank you, not outstay their welcome. And if they're able, that's really important. More people should understand this when they come around to your house. Anyway, that's the lockdown talking. Just not using. I like the guy in The Sims going, "Dag, please, everyone." And then if there's any kind of wealth on either side, or if they've had a particularly good time, you exchange guest gifts. So something hopefully of equal value, and that then links you forever as well. So for example, I forget who it is on the battlefield of Troy and in which book, but there's it's Apex and they exchange, they go, oh wait, you look familiar. Oh yeah, my dad met your dad once, or I met your dad. And that's big. So we're Trojan and Greek, but we may not. I can't believe I can't remember this. It's ridiculous.
It's one of the princes. I'm actually going to look it up whilst you.
Okay, do. But then also, it's like, and so-and-so's wits were taken from him because he exchanged bronze armor for tin or something. Tin armor. No one has tin armor. But like, it's not equal value is the idea. But the fact is, they're on the different sides. They're fighting. They literally stop fighting in the middle of battle because they vaguely recognize each other. And they're like, oh yeah, no, we know each other. Down the line, our parents exchange guest gifts, whatever. So we can't fight. And that's interesting. And I love the fact that, like, pause, wait,
just hold on, I recognize you.
And so, but also Xenia, the idea. Oh, I'm just wobbling my desk. The idea that I get really passionate now. It could be a god.
Yeah, well, that's the Philemon and Baucis story, isn't it?
It could be a god. So if in case it's a god, you'd better give them all Xenia. And then again, in the Odyssey, when Odysseus is with the Phaeacians and he's had all the Xenia and he still hasn't said who he is, and they're like, now we know he can't be a god because we're really good friends with the gods, and it'd be really unlikely that they'd come down and not tell us who they were. Right? He's like, oh, I'm not a god.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah.
So, right, Xenia is absolutely the most important thing, because anyone who transgresses Xenia comes to a bad end. Paris steals the wife of his host Menelaus, Troy burns. And Polyphemus eats the men he's meant to be looking after because they're a guest in his home technically, thus he gets blinded. But I have this theory that Odysseus's entire personality of action post leaving for Troy is all down to Xenia. So again, like I said, I made a reading of every single thing that he did every time he's mentioned, except of course the really important bit right at the start, but I'll come back to that. And this is brilliant. Everyone must own a copy. And everything he does, whether good or bad, somehow comes down to Xenia. Basically, if you break Xenia with him, if you do it wrong, you are dead to him, or find a way to kill you.
Literally, yeah.
Literally, he will kill you. Whereas if you give good Xenia, you will survive, and he will make it his business to make you survive. So I have examples, right? So from the Odyssey, the Phaeacians and Nausicaa in particular, they give perfect Xenia. Nausicaa gives him great Xenia, even though he is naked, covered in scurf, and is literally holding an enormous branch.
An enormous branch.
I do find that very, very amusing. And you were like, oh no, I'm going to do it from here. I'm not going to go up to you. It's so important that he doesn't go up to her, because the simile says he's like a mountain lion. So if he was to run up to her and grab her knees,
terrifying.
that would look like a sexual attack.
Yeah.
And, that's not a good way to get hospitality. No. So the fact that he does it, and then she still offers him, although she does it in a really clever way, she's like, yes, of course you can have hospitality, because no one who knows us would ever try and attack us, because we're very powerful people. She's got that from her father, clearly. And
she's great. She is so great.
She is so great.
And then, even though she's given him this fabulous Xenia, when he gets to the king and queen, they're like, oh no, she's giving you terrible Xenia. She should have brought you home straight away. And the reason why he doesn't come home with her is because she's trying to protect her reputation.
Yeah.
And so it all links into the role of women as well. And Arete, almost the wife, the queen, who is so beloved, almost breaks Xenia by almost asking him his business, which she shouldn't do yet, because he hasn't had the full thing. And she says, can you just tell me where you got those clothes from? Because she recognizes them as being clothes from the palace. And that's when he says about Nausicaa. So she's more worried probably about her daughter than anything else. But he doesn't say, because Xenia also allows him to then have this great build-up. So then he can reveal who he is. But
that was a dramatic reveal.
They offer him everything, including a ship and a crew to get home. Huge. Yeah. So that was boffly.
Well, I suppose like the reason why he's so concerned about Xenia is because he relies on it so much in the Odyssey. He's just like so alone for such a long time that he has to. I mean, I think he abuses that in the Polyphemus bit.
To be fair to him though, most people he comes across abuse Xenia.
Yes. That is true. Yeah,
right,
that is true.
I feel like he learns his responses from this.
Yeah, that is true.
And even though it was pointed out, he does kind of use Nausicaa's want to get married against her a little bit. She's the one who brings it up.
He so many times. He talks about it so much.
But also it's really unfair, because Athene visits her in a dream and says, you're not married yet. You've got all these brothers in the house who wait to get married. Go do their washing and then find a husband. And so it's in her mind, and that's purely so that she will think of him in positive terms and give him more.
Yeah.
But then even her dad mentions it.
Yeah.
Like, do you not want to stay here and marry my daughter? I don't know your name yet. You literally appeared out of nowhere.
Seriously, she's desperate. Someone take her. Please, strangers.
Okay, so I made my list of Xenia. Okay, suitors, civil war aspect. They are bad guests because they overstay their welcome.
Yeah, they do.
Then again, they stay for 4 years because Penelope has done her plots with the weaving. So, but then, so that they're all implicit in that. But they haven't left, and come back later maybe. They have outstayed their welcome. They've actually plotted to kill Telemachus.
Yeah,
that's not okay. You can't plot to kill your host. That's not how a dinner party goes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's films with this premise.
If there's not, we should make.
I actually wrote down, do they deserve to live after that?
In the framework of Greek society, no.
Even harsher than I. Someone, I can't remember who now, was repeatedly pointing out, several people were repeatedly pointing out in the Twitter conversation that they offered to pay recompense. And he still kills them. But they offer to pay recompense because he's aiming his bow at them. And they don't want to die.
You would, wouldn't you? Like,
and then
they're begging
they still attack him back. So
yeah, and also it's a bit late by that point. Like, the damage has been done in Odysseus' eyes.
It has, rather. It has, and I love how they just get. The first one, Antenor, I think he's just out. He just gets his arrow through the neck, and they're all like, "Oh no, let's pay recompense." Okay, you're gonna. And actually, Antenor as well is so dishonest when they're doing the whole bow competition, and he's like, "You try, no, now you try." Oh no, no one's doing it. Well, we shouldn't be doing it anyway today, because it's a feast day, so we'll do it tomorrow. And he just doesn't want to have a go in case he messes up in front of everyone. And
that whole bit is just like such a moment of
fragile ego.
fragile egos. Like,
and on the note of him killing the suitors, Tiresias tells him in book 11 he's going to kill the suitors. So he kind of has to kill the suitors now because Tiresias.
Yeah, well, he claims that Tiresias says that he has to kill them. I mean, you know, it's all from his point of view.
It's all very convenient.
It is a bit.
It is very convenient.
I think the most interesting aspect of it is that he acknowledges that people outside of that little bubble of what's happening in Ithaca will judge him for it. That's the interesting thing. Like, in our mind, he's very justified in doing it in the framework of Greek society, but people outside of that bubble it's not okay with them. So I think this is another way in which we find the Odyssey is so rich in complexity, and that is the best thing about it, is that these things are kind of are brought to the fore, and these are the things we're supposed to think about. Just love it.
Well, on the note of the sort of the bubble, which is a very topical term these days, there's a bit when they are dead, and it does start to cause this civil war. There's an assembly, and the men of the town come and they talk about their dead sons who were there. And the best criticism is Eupeithes, who's father of Antinous. And he says, "Friends," he began, weeping for his son, "what terrible harm this man Odysseus has done to us Achaians. He sailed away, taking many of our fine young men in his hollow ships. But he lost his ships, he lost his men, and now on his return he has killed the best of the Cephallenians. Quick now, before he can escape to Pylos or to Elis for the Achaians rule, let us make a move, or our shame will last forever. And we will be disgraced even in the eyes of generations yet unborn if we do not avenge ourselves on the murderers of our sons and brothers." And then Medon the Bard arrives, who was in the palace and was spared literally at the point of the knife, because Telemachus went, "No, Dad, don't kill him. He's cool." And he says,
He's fine.
"Listen, fellow Ithacans, it was not against the will of the deathless gods that Odysseus carried out his plans. With my own eyes, I saw an immortal who looked exactly like Mentor, funny enough, standing at his side. And this immortal was at one moment ahead of Odysseus, cheering him on, and at the next storming through the hall, taking turn to the suitors." So there's this idea that the gods have actually blessed him. It was Athene.
Yeah.
And then Hannatherses, Master's son, says, "Ithacans, listen to what I have to say. Your own stupidity, my friends, is to blame for what has happened. You would not listen to me or to Mentor, the shepherd of the people, when we urged you to check your sons in their career of folly. They were guilty of a great wrong because they wickedly abandoned all standards of civilized behavior, plundering the estate and insulting the wife of our greatest man, whom they counted on never seeing again." So there is this great argument as to what the correct behavior has been.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to the idea that they broke Xenia. They've earned it, and you didn't tell them off for it. You failed in your fatherhoods. And then the one who was saying Odysseus is a dick, he goes off, and then he gets killed immediately.
Immediately dead. I do find it interesting, I don't know, what kind of scenario would they have ever have got Penelope to remarry? They probably never would have done, because she is the
quintessential constant wife,
loyal. Yeah, exactly. But it's quite an interesting thing where it's I'm going to come back to this again and be like, not people didn't think Odysseus was coming back, except Odysseus. And they've had years of people coming to the court and going, "I'm Odysseus," and then being proven that they weren't. So it's quite an interesting thing where they obviously pushed Xenia too far, but then sort of what should they have done in that situation? And I don't know what the answer to that is.
Probably
and obviously not eat them out. Yeah, I mean maybe just gone home occasionally, and not
eating their own food to kill Telemachus. That would be another really good really good thing.
The thing I find super interesting is that clearly Telemachus has come of age, and why is he not crowned?
Well, Penelope says, "Should I now," when she's talking to disguised Odysseus, "should I now go off and marry one of these men and leave my son to rule?" So it's almost like she's waited the last possible moment, and now she's caving, because at least this way, if she takes herself away, the palace is saved from the suitors, and her son can rule. And perhaps his terrible behavior towards her, where he's telling her to go to bed, that's her actually realizing that he is now, and him trying to make the point that he is now of age, although I think he's doing it more for the suitors than for her benefit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's gone on his little like gap year, sort of finding himself and his father, and you know, then he's come back without his dad, and you know, well, I know he knows that this is fine by this point, but you know, he's come back to Ithaca, and it sort of is a moment where he's a man, he's come of age. That's his kind of like, you know, initiation into manhood almost. And so I suppose that we do mock him for that in the episode for telling Penelope to go to bed, but no, it is, you know, a much more social reason of him taking on.
But you're so right about it being like his rite of passage. You know, I was saying only about those guys like sports. That's the measure of a man. That's actually how I feel about sports anyway. And then Telemachus actually gets to fight in battle against them. And then at the very end, which I had to reread because I hadn't read it since my degree, and Laertes is loving this, by the way. He's like, wow, Odysseus and his son fighting together, woo! He's just having a great time. And Telemachus is getting to fight in the civil war for the 5 seconds that Athene allows it to happen when Antinous' father dies, and then she bellows for everything to stop, and it stops. So he does get to have like a proper rite of passage. Is the Odyssey more of a Bildungsroman for Telemachus than it is for Odysseus? Discuss. Perhaps. Very interesting. Okay, I mean, I talked way too much, but I want to finish off my idea about Xenia because people were going on about who Palamedes. Right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. In fact, Polyphemus first, because he's actually in the Odyssey. Sorry. Right. So Xenia, when Odysseus goes to is on Goat Island and he sees the other island, and he's like, right, we should go over there because we could get some Xenia. Okay, fine. So he takes one ship, and he sees enough civilization there in Polyphemus's cave to assume that he will get Xenia in return. Because Polyphemus is not completely uncivilized. He has knowledge of animal husbandry. He has knowledge of turning milk into other milky delights, cheese, and all this stuff. I couldn't remember the word.
That's what I'm going to call cheese from now on. It's just milky delight.
But it is.
It is. Yeah, it is. Right. You're not wrong.
I couldn't eat all the cheeses while I was pregnant, and when I came out of hospital, my husband just like cheese spread of all the cheese.
That.
A cheese board,
cold meats and prosecco. That was very nice.
Oh, lovely.
Very good. But I digress. So he goes in and he's like, okay, so this person is civilized enough, and he's brought wine with him as a guest gift. Which happens to be really strong. Plot device. And his men say, oh, look at all these sheep. Let's steal them. And he says no. Even though it would have been better in hindsight that we should have done that. But no, because that would be wrong. That would be against Xenia. He can't break Xenia. And then Polyphemus turns up and he's like, I don't do Xenia. I'm the son of Poseidon. I can do what I like. I'm going to eat your men, even though I clearly eat cheese. Cheese, but man flesh. Lovely. And then he does that. And then he has to be blinded because it's the only way of actually neutralizing this threat, saving the rest of the men. Because if he kills him, they're going to be stuck in there. I mean, he says, I estimated that the boulder would take 24 four-wheel chariots to move. That's a lot of chariots.
So specific. I love those Homer moments where he just says something really specific and you're like,
I love similes that are just perfect. You can really understand it from that. They're absolute suckers if they kill him. So they have to remove him. And then Odysseus gets cursed. That's not really fair. Come on.
I think it's fine. Yeah. Like, yes, he might have like expected that he could have Xenia. I do see that. But can you just help yourself in Xenia?
Oh no,
like you can't just help yourself.
Okay. So he has brought a guest gift to exchange. Yeah. They're really hungry right now. They probably should wait, but they know, right? They think they know that they will get Xenia in return. So that's going to be okay because they would have been offered the cheese anyway by a good host.
It just makes me think of Baucis and Philemon. It makes me think of Baucis and Philemon and like just imagining Zeus outside the front door and Hermes just walking in and grabbing the goose and like taking it off to the fireplace and like spit roasting it, and then being like, it's fine, it's fine. I know the situations are very different, but that is what my brain is like flashing before my eyes right now.
I think I can't get past the fact that it is coming from Odysseus' point of view with the Polyphemus story, and I do think that is like because like the whole thing with the curse is kind of his fault because of kleos and to say his name and whatever. I think he does want to kind of
he suffers by everyone else dying.
Oh well, a classic Greek myth though. So like suffer by collateral. I mean, like
I'm gonna you're gonna come home alone and you've lost everything, but everyone else is dead.
I suppose as a hero that is probably big shame. But
really rubbish for everyone else concerned.
Everyone else.
Yes. But I do think though that the Polyphemus story is about also misunderstanding foreign cultures and assimilating foreign cultures into Greek culture. And like, I don't know, maybe this is a bit of a modern way of looking at it, and actually the Greeks maybe wouldn't have thought about it this way, but it's about Odysseus assuming that Polyphemus works in the same way that he does, and actually he doesn't, and so Odysseus completely bungles the whole situation and then sort of tries to therefore tells the story going, well, he was a monster, he's completely barbaric, the only way I could deal with this is because he just like ate all my men, and I feel like there's quite an interesting interplay there between Greekness and otherness.
That's really reminded me of I think it's in in part of the GCSE we're teaching, we're looking at the stories of Hercules and Hercules versus Cacus, and in one version of the myth, in the popular version that's in the Iliad, Cacus is this fire-breathing monster who beheads people and nails their heads, and almost I quite like the idea that it's like a story about how a volcano erupts. There's all this smoke and everything. And then in another version, which I think is in Livy, he's a shepherd. So he's a shepherd who transgresses, and over time he becomes the bogeyman. And I think that there could be something in that with Polyphemus.
I mean the Virgil passage from the Aeneid is like so similar to the Polyphemus passage in Homer, and like Ovid then plays with
that's not the only bit that's very, very similar to
obviously not, but as in that specific, there's definitely a line drawn between Cacus and Polyphemus, because
I wish I'd thought of that before when I was actually teaching. That'd be really useful. Okay, well maybe it won't. Okay, maybe I will remember that when I actually get back to school at some point.
It's a great bit, that Cacus bit. But yes,
are you ready for my final? Okay, so non-Odyssey Xenia, Palamedes, right?
Yes.
Palamedes, Palamedes is the guy who calls him out for pretending to be mad and makes him go to war. And Odysseus then gets him killed whilst in Troy. And people were shouting, this is awful. And he's just doing it because he's jealous. And there could actually be a thing. Palamedes is meant to be really, really intelligent guy. Apparently he invented, the alphabet and many other things just associated with Palamedes.
Interesting.
Good for him. Good for him.
So my argument is this, right? Palamedes comes to Odysseus's house. And Odysseus, for a start, he wasn't one of the suitors for Helen. Yes, he made up the whole thing that they all had to swear an oath to go and protect her if someone nicked her. But he probably did that thinking, then they won't fight over her because they know who's going to come after her. He didn't factor in foreign Paris, right? And so Palamedes then comes to his house, takes his baby son, and threatens his life. By putting him in front of the plow. And there's another version of the story as well. Thank you, Gans. He holds a sword to the baby. Right. I have recently become a parent. I can understand it is this deciding instantly that this man will die at some point. But he has put his family in danger. And then he's also ripping him from the bosom of that family and making him go to the war that he may be slightly responsible for starting, but ultimately isn't the one who nicked Helen, and also didn't expect to have to go either. So, okay. And then later when he gets home and someone threatened his son again, not again, and then he goes and he kills all the suitors. I really think there's a massive bit of his psyche, which is must protect son at all costs. And if you come to someone's house and you threaten their child, that's bad Xenia.
Yeah, no, okay.
Comparison,
also, yeah.
Antenor, is that all right? I'm gonna say Antenor, the Trojan. At the beginning of the Trojan War, Odysseus and Menelaus go into Troy as an embassy to have peace talks, to just try and get Helen back without fighting. Antenor is the Trojan that puts them up in his home, and he gives them excellent Xenia. And no one remembers that Odysseus tries to get the war cancelled. Let's just put that out. That's another thing he does that's maybe not horrific. And then they have to leave because Paris bribes people to try and kill Odysseus and Menelaus, which is also bad Xenia because they're pretty good hosts. So
Paris is terrible at Xenia in general.
yeah.
Definitely established that. But this is just, when I found that, I was like, another thing. And I ended up making an entire video and then a podcast because I hate him so much. So then when Troy falls, Odysseus goes and saves Antenor's son, because I think Antenor's dead by this point, so he can't save Antenor. And it came up like 4 times in there. There's loads of retellings of this story that he goes and he saves Antenor's son. Yes, he also kills Andromache's and Hector's child. I'm not saying that didn't happen, and that's a very direct contrast, but that's a practical thing. Horrible to say it. That's revenge coming back later on. That's the reason for that. Yeah. So again, I'm not vindicating him here. If he came near my child, I would end him immediately. But that's clearly the same kind of idea that he's got. They've affected him in some way, and they've broken Xenia, or they've given good Xenia, and he will fight to the death for people who give good Xenia, and he will just kill people who don't.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely, I totally agree with you that Xenia is right at the heart. Yes.
Yeah.
Now do we not hate him quite so much?
I know it's still him.
Is that okay.
No, I know. I think
the thing with Odysseus, is I have such an enormous affection for him that comes from, first reading the Odyssey and probably my teen years. Like, I felt him to be the most relatable of the Greek heroes, and what we find as success today, that he was quite modern in that respect. And I think just the more I read outside of the Odyssey was actually what made me dislike him the most. And like lots of different things. I mean, everything you're saying is obviously, great points. So I still dislike him. If I take him at face value, I do think he makes bad choices, but I do love him at the same time. And I hope maybe the humor that we kind of approached the last one with, it might be, if you like peel everything back, maybe that affection is there, hopefully. But
you sound like you hate him for disappointing you.
Probably.
When you never meet your heroes because they've punted babies off battlements and you just didn't have the time.
To be fair, in my mind, Neoptolemus kills a Styanax. In my mind, that's the version I choose to believe. But maybe because I don't like to think Odysseus would go that far. But
I think also that sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I think a lot of the, like, there are a lot of characters in myth that I feel quite apathetic about, and it's almost like my passion for Odysseus burns, whether that's hatred or love or whatever. He's a great character, and actually, I don't think necessarily supposed to love him or hate him very as much as him. And I think, like, a lot of the time when people, on that kind of Twitter thread will be like, oh, you're just, putting modern things on it. And it's like, well, the point of myth is that we're supposed to keep reinterpreting it, and obviously you can take that too far and whatever. But I think, like, the fact that he creates such visceral reactions is what makes him great in many ways.
Absolutely. I think he's just the best example of the whole point. Well, for me, the whole point of myth, which is exploring what it means to be a human, and like he does that so well, So I think I love what he represents. I disagree with his choices sometimes.
I think it also comes down to, sorry, really quickly, I think it basically comes down to the fact that Penelope is the greatest.
She's the best.
I'm like, how you cannot just absolutely beeline for home, no matter what, to get back to Penelope, I don't understand.
I mean, Odysseus wants Penelope so much, he gets Tyndareus, Helen's father, to vouch for him to Achaians, who was also a Spartan, because he's only king of some poxy little island. He's not huge. And then does Tyndareus this favor in return of cutting up the horse and get everyone to stand on it, which is so weird. Let's all stand on a piece of a stallion, because we've all stood on a piece of a stallion. We all have blood oath, man. And it's a clever idea. I honestly don't know how Tyndareus didn't come up with it himself, aside from the standing on a bit of a dead horse bit.
I feel like with the dead horse, like all of those Greek heroes would have got home after the adrenaline had like left their body, and they would have been like, what? Like, why did we do that?
Like, let's never speak of this again.
But I think that was almost a good choice, because Theseus has previously kidnapped Helen, right? There is form for people kidnapping Helen. He kidnaps her as a child so that he can marry her later.
There is form.
And there's the whole war there, and the Castron Pollux go and kill everyone and get her back. So he knows that this will happen. This is why Tyndareus is so upset about it as well. So getting everyone to agree that they'll all go to war will hopefully stop them all going to war. That sounds like a good decision. I know you were saying
pretty smart
that Troy happened, but it's quite it's not amazingly clever, it's a good decision. And Tyndareus gets to outsource that decision and then blame it on Odysseus. And actually, I think we were talking about whether or not he has any redeeming qualities. He's the guy who gets stuff done, and it's always stuff that other people don't want to do. Like, who's gonna talk Achilles down? Let's send Odysseus. Who's going to take Chryseis back to her really, really, really upset father, Chryses, who's sent Apollo's wrath on us? Let's send Odysseus. He'll talk him round. Oh God, what should we do with Philoctetes, who's been bitten by a snake and won't shut up about it? Odysseus, oh, look, leave him here. He'll understand. Philoctetes was the guy who built the pyre for Hercules when Hercules was still alive and begging to be killed because he'd put on the shirt of Nessus, which was poison, and it was eating him alive. Philoctetes understands what it is to feel that pain and know that there is no end to it. He'll understand when we abandon him here on this island of is it Lesbos? I can't remember.
Lemnos.
Sorry.
Very similar letters.
And then I read, and then the Lemnians left him alone all that time. It'd be very different. It was the lesbians left him alone for all that time. Just like, sorry. So I kind of get the feeling like he thinks Philoctetes will get this, and then Philoctetes doesn't die. He's like, I don't want to go back there. That's but then. And then when he does, he has to go back. They make him go back and get the bow of Heracles from Philoctetes. But Philoctetes doesn't recognize him. So to gain Philoctetes' trust, he tells a story that he's another guy who's also had issues with Odysseus. And then Sinon in Aeneas and the epic cycle, who's the decoy Greek left behind, who says, I was chosen to be sacrificed. Bloomin' Odysseus was the one who put me. He becomes like the boogeyman for all the people outside of Greece. But he's the guy who gets blamed because he's the one they forced to make all these difficult decisions because he's clever. He's kind of the raw end of the stick there a bit, really.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think you're right. He's obviously a trusted. I mean, his men, his crew, and his fellow soldiers clearly really depend on him and respect him massively.
The simile, they're the baby cows and he's the mummy cow come home.
Cute.
So cute. He goes and he saves his men from the Lotus Eaters. He goes and saves them from Circe, even though bloomin' Eurycleia is like, they're all doomed, let's leave. He's like, no. And it says, I had absolutely no choice. I had to go back and get them. But then again, he is telling that story, so okay, we can maybe.
It's also the same bit where I know we mentioned this in the episode, where Circe first says to him, "You must be Odysseus. Let's lie together." And it's just like, that's definitely reported speech from Odysseus there. that she A, recognises him, and then B, is immediately like, let's have sex.
We must.
Just going back to Philoctetes really quickly. That story is one that I love because I did the Sophocles play Philoctetes for my finals at uni, and that play particularly is a really great example of how disliking Odysseus is not a new thing, and it's not a Roman thing either. It's also an Athenian thing. That play is super complex, and it's all just a hatchet job on Odysseus. And Odysseus's character in that also kind of plays into that. He talks about how unvirtuous it is to be a liar and a trickster, and he then forces Neoptolemus. So in this version, he goes with Neoptolemus and makes Neoptolemus talk about how much he hates Odysseus. And so then Neoptolemus goes to Philoctetes and is like, oh, that bloody Odysseus, he's awful. He stole my dad's armor. It shouldn't have been his. It should be mine. It's a valid point, to be honest. But
I think he gave it back to him later, but then that could be another version of a story, really.
I think Sophocles is just trying to make a point. But the whole thing is... And then Philoctetes, everything he says is about how terrible Odysseus is, and how he makes these terrible lies. And I find it so interesting that in 5th century BC Athens, they're also exploring the bad sides of Odysseus. And like, I'm not saying that means he is a bad person, or that the Greeks thought he was a bad person. I'm just saying like this idea of exploring Odysseus's actions generally is not a new thing. And it's not a modern anachronistic thing that we're doing either. But I admit, like, obviously the Odyssey is like it's not the same. But yeah, just the Philoctetes play is great. I kind of read it as a comedy, if I'm being honest. Sophocles' only comedy, because it's basically just a lot of Philoctetes screaming about how in pain he is. And there's a great bit at the beginning where Philoctetes also lives in a cave, like Polyphemus. He's also kind of become this uncivilized person, having been left on an island with a rotting wound. And he goes, Odysseus just shouts up to Neoptolemus. He goes, Neoptolemus, can you see the cave? And Neoptolemus is like, yeah, I see it. There's no one in it. There's nobody in it. No, there's no one in it. There's nothing in there. You can't see a cup or anything. And it's just, it just reminds me of this Polyphemus moment. And like maybe this is like pre the Odyssey, and how maybe his character's changed by Troy. But yeah, just so many funny moments in that play, intended or not.
I agree that. I haven't read that one.
I haven't read it either, so it's on my list. No, I think that has been important. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just thinking, because while I was reading, and I don't think I put this in the list, but it was something else, and I can't remember if it was, am I being an idiot? Did Socrates write any plays? Because if it wasn't Socrates, then it was Sophocles. But I swear it said Socrates. And who wrote Ajax, the one that survived? Oh God, I'm probably making a mess of this now.
Gonna get my phone out again.
Oh, but the idea is that when Ajax has gone mad and he's killed all these sheep, and people are saying he should be punished, the character of Odysseus is the only one who shows him any pity. And he's so horrified at what has happened to his friend. And then when he kills himself, they're suggesting that he doesn't get a burial, and Odysseus insists that he gets a burial. And I rather liked that. Actually, that was a very sweet version of Odysseus that you really don't see very often, and that was one of the only ones. Why that character? Why pick a? Okay, perhaps because he's the one who's won and against it, but sorry, against him, and won the armor. But at the same time, that could have been any other character, really, and Odysseus could have been the bad guy. So I found that fascinating, and so fascinating I couldn't remember who wrote it.
I just checked, and it's I can confirm it is Sophocles, which, just going back to the Philoctetes play, those plays would have been performed within years of each other. So I love this idea of these multifaceted Odysseus being explored in 5th century Athens. Anyway, sorry.
No, all I was going to say was that I suppose Ajax and Odysseus are quite a sort of natural pair, because they're like brains and brawns, like, together. So it's quite sweet, actually, like you say, that he sort of, Odysseus kind of looks out for him, as like the brawny kind of like strong man who needs a bit of like guidance from Odysseus, but you know, and Ajax is kind of that very like macho character that kind of balances him out, which is why, you know, presumably they're both sent to persuade Achilles, because Odysseus is the kind of rationale and Ajax is the like, come on man, come fight, kind of
covering all their bases.
Yeah, exactly. It's like on both sides. But no, that is, I think like what has been important in this is you've explained a lot of the rationale, which, you know, we kind of often deliberately take it out of context for comic effect, but you know, it is really important. And like I do feel like there is much more rationale behind what Odysseus does than we give him credit for.
Most definitely,
like, which is why we brought you.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad. I don't want to make people love him, but I'd love to understand him better. There's a book I really want to read now as well, after our long Twitter conversation by the chap who runs the Sententio. Never blimmin' say it.
Yeah,
anyway,
no, I can't. Yeah,
and the Many Minds of Odysseus, I think it's called, and I'm desperate to read this now. I have to put it on my list so I can afford it, because I want to see what he said about it, and how what we've probably discussed, maybe it will feed into that, or maybe be similar to what he said. That would be lovely if we come up with something, actually, and so we can report back then as well. But I do. It's probably the teacher in me. I kind of want to get people to understand things and different.
I think, you know, the conclusion that I think we've sort of keep coming back to is that he's not simple, and we do kind of oversimplify him in our episode, you know, because
I feel like you're apologizing to me.
No, I'm not. No, it's more like that, but like it's just great to have those, you know, it's so important to have those different facets of all these characters. And often what we try and do on the podcast is try and, you know, take a different angle, champion something that is not normally championed, but then, you know, that's why it's so nice then to get like other kind of opinions on it and at other kind of levels of these characters, because they're so rich, and like there's so much to them that you can't cover it all in one thing.
No,
we didn't even get to Troy.
This was meant to be like half an hour.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're still going.
Sorry.
We should probably wrap up soon.
It's just about the thing I was just about to say before you wrap up was I could talk about him for hours, which I think is probably speaks volumes. Like,
in fact, I think we have.
And we haven't even talked about Penelope, which we quite deliberately didn't talk about Penelope in our episode because we want to give her like a proper platform. But I mean, that's a whole other several hours in itself. So
easily.
But I don't know. I think we wanted to, if you're kind of ready to like wrap up, we wanted to firstly end with what's your favorite Odysseus moment.
I mentioned it briefly actually, but it's the bit. I know there's a lot of moments to choose from, but I do love this. We were saying about sort of the slightly comedy version of Odysseus, or the slightly sweeter version of Odysseus, and when he and Achilles and Phoenix, who's a sort of kinsman of Achilles, when he and Ajax and Phoenix go to see Achilles, and they have their Xenia first, you know, Achilles says, Patroclus, we've got guests, go and make some dinner. And they make dinner and they have all the dinner and sitting. And then Ajax and Phoenix look at each other and they're like nodding to each other as if they're about to talk. And Odysseus notices this. So he starts talking first. He's not going to let them bumbling their way into this. He's going to go first and lay out the lay of the land. And he thinks he's being so clever then as well. And he drops in how, Agamemnon has said this, hint, hint, hint. We have been talking to Agamemnon. He has suggested we come here. And then he fails because Achilles is like, right, you're done. Right. More than anything, the face of a man who says one thing in his words and then means another. I'm mangling it so badly here. But then in the Root translation, no, not the Root, in the Hammond, he goes, "Do not sit here and coo your blandishments at me," which is fantasy, old-fashioned English. We're like, don't you come in here and talk about it. And I love then doing it like a dramatic reading of Achilles' speech, where he just gets more and more angry and more angry. So much so that once another teacher came in to check everything was it sounded like I've been shouting for 5 minutes. And the kids get really, really excited then. It's like, oh my God, what's happening? But and then he gets the Sabbath, nothing is worth the point of my life. And it's just, Odysseus has completely missed Achilles' point. And whether or not he gets it afterwards, we don't entirely know, because I think he talks a bit more, and then Ajax gets to say, you're just going to sit here because of a girl. And then Phoenix tries to like guilt trip him here, saying you're not doing what your father said you'd do, and that kind of thing. And so I love the fact that Odysseus fails, and he's really well intentioned. He thinks he knows what he's doing, and he just mucks it up so badly. I mean, no, he fails on the Odyssey, but this feels different because it's like this is work. He's failed at work here.
Yeah, and his words don't normally fail him.
No, they don't. It's only the one with the snowflakes falling thick and fast. His words are so beautiful. And they're just not the right words for Achilles, and he's completely misread the situation. I think that's wonderful, and also just really funny.
Yeah. That's so nice. I'm really looking forward to when we do an episode about Troy and Odysseus, because we didn't get there.
so much to talk about in Troy, before Troy, on the way to Troy.
After Troy. Yeah, in the Gantz here it suggests that he didn't come up with the horse.
Yeah, I saw you message us that. I was like, what?
I need to read more about this.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
I bet you the Romans.
Yeah, it was probably the Romans. So
the Romans, yeah. Oh man. I mainly thought of this because I don't know if this is on purpose, Jenks, but you said man flesh earlier when you talked about Polyphemus. And I don't know if that was a Lord of the Rings reference, which I'm watching them currently, which is maybe why I thought of it. But when I think of Odysseus, I do often, probably more often than I should, there's like a Gandalf line that just comes to mind, and it's the bit in the Fellowship where he just goes, do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks. And I just always think of Odysseus for some reason, because so associated with trickery, but they're all, I mean maybe associating Gandalf and Odysseus speaks volumes, but like I just wanted to share that little.
That's fun.
I think he's more oh no, he's probably not, but weirdly enough, so you think Gandalf, probably for much better reasons than I think of the I can't remember the species. He's got a really big beard. Oh no, that doesn't narrow it down at all. That one. God,
Gimli.
Dwarf. Yes, and he's nothing like Gimli. I think it's just the look. To be, I think that's what he big beard. Like when he comes home, and he's just like. To be honest, because during lockdown, my husband and I have grown quite a lot of hair, and I think my husband right now actually looks very like what I think Odysseus looks like. Slightly shorter, stocky, a lot of hair. There's a lot of hair, beard.
There's a lot of hair,
and it's kind of a disguise in a way. I think that's what Odysseus probably looked like, and that's Gimli to me as well.
I love that.
Oh, that's so great.
I shall have to share pictures with my husband.
Yes.
Anyway, probably asleep.
I saw your lovely wedding pictures the other day. So.
Yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
I showed my husband the picture of your gold dress, and he was like, "That's amazing." I was like,
"Oh wow, oh that's nice."
And he is a very judgy man, so. Well, I think just before we finish, we have a nudge, wig question of, do you have a fun project that you're working on right now that's maybe Odysseus related?
I do have a fun Odysseus related project.
Could you maybe tell us about that?
I can tell you this. So actually, it's good that I mentioned my husband, because it was kind of his idea. And I can't remember how we got onto the subject. I think he was reading a Choose Your Own Adventure style book called Choose Your Own Apocalypse. Little did we know at the time in 2019 didn't have pandemic in it, actually. It was mostly by Trump. So, but and I was saying something about the Odyssey, and we were at someone else's wedding. We were away for the weekend. So we were in this lovely cottage, and he said, "Why don't you turn the Odyssey into a Choose Your Own Adventure?" Like, I literally picked up some paper and started.
Yeah,
and that was in 2019. So I haven't had a lot of time to work on it because of pandemic and baby and stuff, but I have been slowly working on it. I'm up to book 13. So he's got to Ithaca, or has he? Because you know about this because you very kindly test read it for me. But there's about 300 different sections. At the moment, I counted the other day, there are 25 different endings depending on what you make. And the whole idea is he always constantly saying his mind went this way and that, and what did he choose? And you were saying about his bad decisions. Because there's a lot of people who've done test readings for me have done it. Oh, I got home really easily. So what? And I think it was it Sarah who said we didn't want to make the same choices that Odysseus did.
That probably was me.
I think so. Yeah, so that I'm trying to get that finished because I think it would be oodles of fun. And aside from having a slightly educational bent, and that the kids, my students, whoever reads it, will hopefully get again a bit more into the mind of Odysseus. Like, why does he choose to do this? What is his drive? What are his motives? Clearly, as I said, Xenia and Kleos. But just kind of, I quite like the idea that what if he went in a different direction, and what if he didn't get this help or that, and maybe his story is not so grand, and how did he end up, and so forth. So and I'm trying to also work out a you are Penelope and a you are Telemachus sections. They'll be a bit shorter, but I'm like I put in my little podcast thing, I get so upset people don't talk about them in relation to the Odyssey because they're so important. So and my understanding of Penelope is very driven by Margaret Atwood's Penelope ad, which I was talking to you about before as well. So there'll be an aspect that's
got it ready
as well. And I even put in book 11. He can go and talk to. Oh, I have, haven't I? Where is it? It's up there. You can go and talk to the dead, and it's not skipping over any details. Everything that's in the Odyssey is in
there is so much detail.
It is so impressive. It is mind-bogglingly impressive. Like, I don't know how you keep track of it, and you stay so true to the text. It's amazing.
I intend to have everyone read the Odyssey in some form or another and understand it better, hopefully, from this, and also just have a lot of fun. I've actually had a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old read it as well. And I was particularly impressed because I've known that 14-year-old since he was 8, and he's not that interested in a lot of things unless it has Lego or computer game aspect. So he read it like 3 times, and I was extremely proud. So yeah, that's really cool. So hopefully that will be finished and I can share that with people.
Yes. I'm so excited. Yeah, I basically ended up in a loop where I was like, I'm not going to let Odysseus make any good decisions in this. Whenever I got to anywhere that was like, you could go home and like play it safe, I was like, no. It just got quite elaborate. Very excited.
It gets so elaborate later on. He starts having flashbacks to the war. I've taken a little bit of poetic license, actually. I've got when he's listening to Demodocus, I've gone inside his head why he's crying. I'm getting quite. I was rereading it the other day. I'm like, it's a lot simpler at the start.
Yeah.
Headlines. Now it's like, listen to Demodocus and it reminds you of this when you're in the battle. And I have to get some Iliad detail in there.
Yeah.
I think it's allowed. Again, I like to think that that's the character development of Odysseus.
Yeah.
In the text.
It is. It definitely is. Yeah.
Plus, if you've got to page 300, I owe you some decent paragraphs, I think, by that point. The persistence. It needs to be published in a hardback form with many, many bookmark ribbons in it. So you can I might change my mind. So I just put all the bookmarks in. And
that would be so great.
You wouldn't read it in one sitting. Like the Odyssey itself.
Exactly.
I'm imagining some sort of like Dungeons and Dragons offshoot roleplay game now.
This totally speaks to me because I run all the roleplay gaming at my school.
Love that.
Well, I mean,
sorry.
I was going to say the Odyssey is a natural next step.
I think so. It's been overlooked for some time. No, it hasn't. Everyone's read it. No, they haven't. Okay. I'm tired now. I'm just talking waffle. But no, it needs to be in this additional format. It just does. I need to see this through. Thank you for letting me debut the whole idea, because I haven't talked to anyone publicly about it yet, so it's very exciting.
Oh, so exciting.
Heard it here first.
Yes, we debuted it.
Breaking news.
Very exciting. I don't really know how to. I don't really want this to end, but we probably should.
Neither. Yeah, I think my food is sitting in the other room.
Oh no! Oh, I'm so sorry to keep you from your dinner.
No, I'd sorry. What did you say?
It's talking about this being worth not eating.
Oh yeah, 100%. No contest.
Absolutely no contest.
I suppose like the main way we should wrap it up is just say like an enormous thank you.
Oh, thank you. This was so nice.
Such a big thank you.
My husband and I, we love each other and we talk all the time, but I don't get to talk about this kind of stuff with anyone, and I have to work, and my friends are just not interested. So this has been so lovely, and it's been just the best thing to meet you guys, and as a few other lovely people I have met. Social media can be a great thing sometimes.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
absolutely ditto.
Yeah, some of the loveliest people are classics people on Instagram and Twitter, and I've met a lot of friends within lockdown, which has been just so, I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from your podcast too, because I'm such a narcissist. Nerdy references.
Yes.
We love them.
No, totally. We love a nerdy reference. No, totally. I think it was an aspect of podcasting that I didn't really I hadn't really thought about that would happen, that we'd make some social media friends, and it's delightful, absolutely delightful. So, and thank you for bringing your very deep Odyssey knowledge to your very ranty opinions.
Oh, I'm going to get so told off by people who've said, you're overthinking it, woman.
No.
I don't think that's possible. That's not possible with Myth.
But I hope
it's
not.
It's not. It's official. It's scientifically not possible. Well then, shall we say bye?
I don't want to.
I think I need to.
If you stop recording, does it end the call, or do you want to?
No.
Okay.
We can stop recording. So how shall we?
How do we end? I feel like I've just got so long, farewell, Venus, say goodbye.
Wildly problematic.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, everyone.
Before we go, you should
go when my mascara starts running from
everyone should go and follow at Greek Myth Comix, spelled Comix, on Instagram and Twitter. Some very cracking content on both platforms.
And purchase from Redbubble.
Thank you.
Yes. Merch, amazing art. Yeah. Do it. You'll do yourselves a favour if you do that.
Yeah. And that is all.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That's lovely. I'm awfully embarrassed about this stuff. It's really kind, thanks.
But yeah, we hope you've enjoyed listening to this, and maybe it's given you a more well-rounded view of Odysseus than previously.
Maybe.
Fingers crossed.
And yeah, but join us again. We'll do this again, I think.
Yeah. I'll come make you feel things, the characters you hate. I'm on it.
I hope that's a promise. Okay.
Right. Good night.
Good night.
I'm going to stop the recording now, right?
Yeah, stop the recording now.